All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Merkel. I am the president of Graduate Student Association. We are going to talk about mental health today. GSA is a free organization for all graduate students that represents the graduate students on campus and enrolled at UCM. Our main goal is for graduate students to get involved not only on campus, but with each other professionally, socially, to that capacity. It is a free organization for all graduate students. Our aim is to just pretty much get everybody involved, meet professional members of the staff, not only in UCM, but locally and maybe even regionally and nationally. So the exec board, my name is Nathan, I'm the president, and then we also have our other exec board members here as well. They'll introduce themselves.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Sylvester Radcliffe. I am the vice president of GSA. Katie, you go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie DeBridney. I am the secretary for GSA.
Hello, my name is Maya Duncan, and I am the public relations chair.
And I'm Lizzie Amaro. I am the GA for the GER office. That's kind of the liaison for GSA and just kind of oversees everything.
Awesome. So since due to unfortunate times due to COVID and everything, we won't really have a lot of in-person events this semester, but our plan is to start trying to plan things for later this semester and upcoming into the spring. So the plan today is to talk about mental health and how to better yourself mentally, not only as a student, but as a person. And luckily, Sylvester had a really good idea of talking about mental health and bringing up a mental health forum. And so I'll let him go into a little bit. And we actually have a guest speaker today from the Counseling Center that he can talk a little bit about.
Okay, so I decided to, we decided to come up with Wellness Week. It's called Mental Health. It's part of wellness. I decided to come up with this just like graduate students, considering that we're getting towards the end of the semester. And I know it's a little bit stressful dealing with classes or just like our personal lives. So this was something that was like thought about and decided to come up with to bring up the organization. And luckily we decided to put this event on for you guys, even though it's virtually, even though it's not in person. I mean, it would be better, but due to COVID and with how the world is, we decided to do it through this. So in a way, like the whole purpose of this thing, like I said, is like to help the students out dealing with school or any like issues. And I felt like this was something that, even though this is like a generic topic, oh yeah, hey, we're talking about wellness, health, like this is something that everybody knows about. It's definitely important, because considering that we all have personal things going on in our lives, and our health is the number one thing, and it's great to, well, I would definitely say like your wellness is important, like your health's important. It's your number one thing, I mean, like other things come up, but if you don't take care of yourself, bottom line, you won't be able to live, and that's kind of not, that's really not the goal of this. So this was something that something that's had to come up with, and now we're putting it on. So, and now I would like to introduce Dr. Fuller, and she will be talking to you all about Counseling Center, as well as just like resources, questions on for campus.
Well, hello, I am Dr. Melissa Fuller. I'm one of the clinicians at the Counseling Center here at UCM, which is a free service that is available to all students, whether you're a part-time or full-time. Doesn't matter if you're a graduate student or an undergraduate student. If you are enrolled at UCM, you can enjoy or utilize our services at your necessity and need.
That's great. Thank you. So I guess we'll just open up the floor to questions as well. I wanted to thank you very much for being here and giving us your time to talk about mental health. I'll start off with a first question. I was wondering if you could just give your base definition of mental health, what you think mental health really is at a baseline.
Sure. So we have terms in our field and in society that they just kind of throw around: mental disorders, mental health issues, mental health concerns. The idea of mental health in itself is really just this proactive idea that you are having a balance between the stressors in life and self-care. Essentially, that is probably as layman and as basic as we can get. It's when the whack of balance gets off kilter that we struggle with managing the stressors, which then creates other issues and concerns. Yeah. Do you want me to expand on that anymore?
Oh, no, that's very good. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you very much.
Okay.
If anybody else has any questions, they can go ahead and ask away.
I'll say one of my questions would be, what made you or considered you in to go into counseling? I know, like I said, like people, I know counseling, and like I know like people who have done it, but you know, like kind of like the main thing people do is kind of to like help people. But I just kind of want to get your intake on like what got you into doing it.
Yeah, so this is my second professional career. I actually started out as an educator. I was an English teacher for almost 10 years for middle school and high school, and a girls basketball coach in Texas, which I absolutely loved. I started working on my master's while I was still coaching and teaching. I did that full time, and then I went on to get my PhD to become a doctor. But what started it for me was the idea that once I got burned out from teaching and coaching, I would go into mental health, and I really wanted to help actual juvenile youth that were headed into the prison system to try and help them get on the right track and make better choices. In that process, though, I really was intrigued by how much I was learning that was actually helping the students that were in my classrooms, because I didn't want to mess them up, right? Like we all have those impressionable moments in our lives, and we all are really seeking out some mentorship and that role model. And a lot of times our teachers and our coaches are that person for us because we spend so much time at school. And so I really wanted to do right by the kids that I was working with. And I always worked in lower socioeconomic school districts. So a lot of times the relationship that I had with the kids was their primary relationship, or they were coming with really important questions and I didn't always have the answer to them. So that kind of got me into the field. And then while I was interning, I worked at a nonprofit, and they offered me a job. And I thought, I don't think that this door would have opened if I wasn't supposed to take a huge leap of faith and a $20,000 pay cut and jump in, to the point where I had to move in with a coworker. I struggled for a while to balance my paycheck and my checkbook. It was quite the transition, for sure, but it has been well worth it. Yeah. So I guess it is true that you get into this field to help people, but at the same time, what I'm learning, especially working on a college campus, is the need to really kind of fill in some of those gaps that college students, I think, forget that they don't have, and just to reframe a lot of the understandings that I think college students, and the perspective is like, man, once I make this choice for my degree, this is what I have to be for the rest of my life. When it's not a matter of this is what I have to be, this is what you get to do, not just what you are, what you become. And that there's so many opportunities. Every day I ask myself, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do when I grow up? Because I still think the sky's the limit. So.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fuller. I've got a question for you.
Sure, Katie.
Do we have a drug/addictions counselor on campus, or who can we point students towards if they're struggling with addiction?
So here at the Counseling Center, we do not have a person specific for that. We are all, I would say, more generalists. We all have our area of expertise, for sure. We have a person on staff for eating disorders. We have an LGBTQ expert. I deal more with trauma. We have a person who loves more interpersonal work. As far as substance abuse, though, generally that would be a concern that we would recommend or have resources for the community, and we would have community resources where I can absolutely send you all a PDF of our counseling resources, and then y'all can post that wherever you would feel like you would need to post that. I think that's also found on our webpage at the Counseling Center webpage on UCM, but I'll have to double check that. But I can absolutely send you the resources we do have. Substance use is generally tied to trauma or some rooted. It's more of like a cause and effect type relationship. And so there are other things that need to be dealt with, and the substance abuse and use just kind of comes out of those issues. And so that's usually like an ongoing process that takes sometimes years to work through. So we would definitely recommend a community resource that definitely specializes in that. Yeah, great question.
Hello, this is Maya. I have a question.
Hey, Maya.
So we are all creeping up on finals right now, very short few weeks away. And I personally feel my stress levels and anxiety levels rising and rising as the weeks go on. What advice do you have for us students to help like cope with those anxieties and those uncertainties, and how to make it through the rest of the semester strong without folding in?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I want to remind everybody that if you've made it this far in the semester and this far in 2020, I think every month feels like 5 years. At least that's how I feel like I'm aging right now in 2020. That you have resiliency, and everybody, every single one of us, whether you are on this phone call or you are listening to the recording, has a resiliency factor within you. And so I would really encourage you to remind yourself that you got this in any form. First and foremost. The second thing is, I wish that I had a magic wand that I could just wave it for everybody to relieve the stress and the anxiety of life and of school. But unfortunately, it's not a one-all fix-all solution. So I think it's important for everybody to remember that first you have choice, and that gives you control. And a lot of anxiety is around the loss of feeling like you have control over things. And so I think it's a really important reminder that if you structure your time, that you get to and that you understand that you get to choose what you do with your time, whether it's studying or planning or getting prepared for whatever you have ahead of you, that gives you and fosters that sense of control. And it's not just a matter of choosing what you get to do with your time. It's really choosing your perspective and your attitude. It's choosing whether or not you make an effort or don't make an effort. It's recognizing that for every choice, there's an outcome, whether it's good or bad. Something's going to happen for every choice that you make, and you are in control of what those outcomes are going to be, depending on the attitude you choose, the effort you put in, staying focused on your goal. So I think remembering that you are resilient, recognizing that you have choice, and that gives you that sense of control. And then the third piece of that, just trying to keep it as simple and relatable as possible, is remembering about the balance piece of things. Take breaks, take brain breaks. I can still remember sitting at my desk during my undergrad and my master's and my PhD, staring at a computer screen, trying to type out a paper and retyping the first sentence over and over and over, as if it was just magically going to happen for 20 minutes. And then finally, like now, in this wisdom that I have gained over the course of my life, I think I just should have walked away. I should have gone outside and got some fresh air. I should have called a friend and just decompressed and then went back to it. Because even though it seems like you're wasting time, it really would save you time if you would just walk away, take a break from it, and then come back to it, as opposed to hitting your head against the wall for 20 more minutes. So I think in terms of stress management, it's really about self-care. It's taking those brain breaks. It's recognizing that this isn't going to be forever. This is a period of your life. And if you are focused on the goal, and you chose this for yourself, and you know that there's an expected outcome, that sometimes we just have to stick with it, even though it's daunting and probably not a lot of fun right now. But the reward is going to come in the future. So self-care, make sure you're doing anything that makes you smile. I talk a lot every time I think I mention self-care. I talk about Route 44 drinks from Sonic between 2 and 4, because sometimes I just love the bubbles. I just need some carbonation in my life, and it makes me smile. And when people think about self-care, they think about, like spa day or going to get my nails done, but it can be those things, but really it's about little things. It's listening to your favorite song in the office, or going outside and taking a walk at lunch, or reading a book, or doing Twitter or TikTok or whatever the apps are that y'all use. And, getting a soda pop if you just want some bubbles for the day. It's literally some of the smallest things that put a smile on your face when we talk about self-care. But it's recognizing that, man, I just need to smile right now. Like, what let me go get a piece of candy. Like it really doesn't matter what it is. But it's so important to keep that in mind. So resiliency, it's a growth mindset kind of thing. It's pushing through even when it sucks, because some days it does. It's taking some brain breaks, remembering that you have choices and control, and it's about balancing out some of that stress with some self-care. Yeah. Great questions.
Awesome.
Thank you for that response.
So I'm actually in the Human Development Family Science program, specializing in marriage and family therapy. So self-care, mental health, that's something that's very emphasized in my program specifically. I'm not really sure how that's handled, if at all, in other programs. But something we talk about a lot is the stigma behind getting help for mental health. We can do self-care, but how do you kind of approach, or what's your thoughts on the stigma behind getting help for your mental health, for those who might not want to jump into counseling because of the negative stigma?
Sure. Great question, Lizzie. I'll try to answer that as best I can. I think it's really unfortunate, and it's really sad that society would deem it as such a weakness to reach out for help, because in a lot of other areas we are encouraged, even as children, to ask for help. If you don't know how to do something, ask somebody. If you don't know how to do this, ask somebody. And so we learn, ask for help, ask for help, ask for help, all the way up to a certain point, and then all of a sudden asking for help turns into this bad thing. And so it's really heartbreaking to see the struggle of students that come in here. And it's encouraging, though, that this question is even being asked and that the conversation is coming to the forefront. So the hope is absolutely that the tide is turning as slowly as it is taking it to make its way around. The pendulum is swinging to the other side, hopefully. But in terms of students coming in, even though it's hard, I don't think there's one student that I don't meet with that I don't virtually high five them for the courage that it takes to make the appointment and to show up. And if anybody listens to this today, I just want to encourage you to be an active participant in your life. And sometimes being an active participant in your life is still asking for help, regardless of what help you may need. That it is perfectly fine to be imperfect. And my motto is, I am perfectly imperfect every day. And sometimes that has to do with having a stressful day. We joke, counselors need counselors, because none of us are immune to mental health stressors, to mental health disorders. The stigma that's around it, it's often even more sad because it's a genetic component to some of us. Like, you are genetically predisposed to depressive characteristics or a little bit more anxiety. Those things just come with who you are, whether or not you can change that. You can't, right? So then how can you be an active participant and be proactive around it? And so I just would really encourage anybody to recognize that it's a sign of bravery and strength and courage to show up and actively participate and to ask for help, just like we're taught when we're kids. Ask for help. And don't be ashamed, as easy as it is for me to sit here and say that. There is no shame here when you come and sit with one of us via Zoom. And I would hope that you would be encouraged that it's okay, whatever it is that you come to the table with. I think regardless of our majors, I think we all should have the approach and take the approach that we are going to sit at a table with different people in our lives, and that we should have a welcoming table regardless of what everybody else brings. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Did I answer that?
You did great.
Okay. I might have gotten lost there a little bit. So if you want to ask again, you can.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, these are very, very good, great answers. I want to thank you again. This next question I have is about the perfect balance of school, work, and personal life. Going into a little bit of statistics, that's information. Actually, our graduate student population, the average age is closer to 30 years old. So that means most of our graduate students usually may have a family, may have a full-time job, may have all these other commitments. What is something that you could, in your opinion, what's the perfect balance, I guess, of school and work and life and social life and all that kind of stuff?
5 to 5 to 5 to 5 to 5. Done. 5% for everything and everybody's happy. No, I kind of laugh in my head that you use the word perfect balance, because I think that the perfect balance is very individualized. It's a great question, but I think it really depends upon each individual. Everybody comes to the table with different values and different priorities just right off the bat. And so everybody has to decide, when you start graduate school, it's a commitment if you have a family. So hopefully you have a supportive spouse or a supportive family to help out with some of the other responsibilities that you may have if you're a single parent, or if you're a parent in a 2 working parent household where sometimes kids need to be picked up or kids need to be taken to practice or whatever that looks like. Or even if you're, just a 30-something-year-old, grad student who's struggling to make, pay the bills because you're working full-time and trying to go to school full-time. It really does vary across the board. And so I think it's important for each of you to really take a self-inventory, because it's not for me to decide, but just to sit back and take a self-inventory of what's important. Grad school, it's kind of like a non-negotiable, right? Like, you signed up for this is your choice. It's temporary. It's not going to be forever. But in that recognition, okay, so if this is the base and this is what's going to take the majority of my time sometimes, what are the other things that I want to fill my time? Is it family? Is it not family? Is it more friends? Is it work? Is it extracurricular activities? Is it self-care? You get to choose. That's one of the choices that gives you some of that control and dictates the outcomes, and kind of keeps the balance. And so I think it's very important for each of you to make that choice for yourself, but to know you have the choice to make, that it's within your control to do it. And that's only going to come by you being able to answer the questions. What are the most important things to you? There are going to be days when some things have to give. Like, there are days even now as a professional, when I think about professional and balancing family and life, I have a 2.5-year-old, and she is a fireball, and she wants all of my time. She wants all of my spouse's time. She wants all of everybody's time. But then how do I manage professional life with my self-care and my life goals? And then my role as a mother, my role as a family member, all those things. And sometimes, you can't do it all. And so you have to be able to say, yeah, this is my limit. And you have to be okay with that. So only you can make that decision and have the answers. Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I had another question. So what would you say to students who had a trauma experiences when they grew up, and what tips would you give them to learn from it to move past it?
That's a great question. A pretty loaded question. I think it really depends upon the trauma that they're coming to the table with. I don't know why, but in my mind, we're just all sharing a meal here. I guess. I really think it depends upon the trauma. And it's more specifically, I think, it depends upon the age of the trauma. So if you had something really catastrophic happen at a younger age in your life, you got to think of the scaffolding process. Maybe you have an attachment piece missing, or you lost a parent, or you were adopted, or something, happened where you missed a chunk of something really crucial in those first 1 to 5 years or 1 to 6 years. And so now as a young adult, and then as a teenager into young adulthood, you're trying to kind of fill that gap. That's going to be different than if somebody at 16 or 17 had a, traumatic car accident and, were injured in some capacity, like what you're coming with it all so much varies. So I would encourage anybody who has a traumatic experience that's really continued to be impacted by that in some form of PTSD or nightmares, or just really feels like that's weighing on them, to seek out some counseling service, whether it's here at the Counseling Center, at Community Health, at the Central Missouri Clinic, in the basement of the health center. In any capacity, I think that trauma needs to be addressed before it comes out sideways, which that just means like it's going to come out. Your body's going to process it some way. How is it going to be processed? Anxiety, OCD, depression, stress, fear of vulnerability, lack of trust. There's so many different ways that it could come out. So I would just encourage anybody who has some trauma, if it's still pressing on them in some capacity, to address that in any way that they could. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
My next, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wish that I had more specific answers to give. I feel like I'm just talking in so much generalities, but it's so hard.
You're great. We have a very general audience, so your answers are great.
Okay.
So coming from a person who I love to overfill my plate, and I pour my energy into those around me, and I am like the team counselor for all my friends, so then I lack on filling my own cup and making sure that I'm okay. What would be your advice for someone like me to make sure that on days that I'm down, like how can I get back up and stuff like that? You get what I'm saying? You get where I'm coming
Sure,
from?
absolutely. I feel you. So the first thing that came to mind when you were speaking was I want you to write this down. Bob Newhart, Stop It, is a clip on YouTube that you can find. And the gist of it is that a woman comes into his office and he's pretending to be a counselor, and she's coming to him with all these problems. And every time she says a problem, he says, "Stop it." She says another one, he goes, "Well, just stop it." But it's a really cute skit that I think that by the end of my speaking on this question, you might find funny. But I think at the end of it, it's about boundaries. And essentially that's kind of what it speaks to. The Bob Newhart skit is that you have to be willing to set boundaries and to be able to say no. And saying no is truly, truly one of the hardest skills in life to become successful at, because it's hard to say no to people because you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to upset them. The expectation is that you're going to be present for them. You're going to fix them. You're going to do all these different things. When in reality, there is a limit to all of us. And when you say, overfill the plate, I've absolutely been one of those people. And in some regards, I still am. I like to wear my Girl Scout badge of Multitask America. And in that, I have to admit that when I do that, sometimes I fail and I don't give the attention to certain things that I should. And so a lot of times I am the one who experiences that failure personally because I haven't taken care of myself. And so I have to remind myself to stop it. Stop feeling like I have to be all these things for all these different people. Stop it. And you have to hold yourself accountable to that. It goes back to that balance of self-care and stress. And when that gets off kilter, it really impacts us, and it gives us those low days because we feel so drained by everything emotionally and physically and mentally. It just to the point where I just want to tap out. And we can't, right? Sometimes we want to, and sometimes we just can't. So then we have to, find some plug to recharge our batteries. But I think it really comes down to boundaries and being willing to say no, and being willing to know that that's okay. I talk a lot about grace, not like in the Christian faith type of grace, but just having grace for ourselves to say, this is okay. This is the extent that I have to give. And this is the extent that I have to offer. And last night was one of those nights. An example, I came home with a migraine, and I told my spouse, it's 8:30. I have to tap out. Like I I'm fixing to be sick. Like I have to go lay down and go to bed. And, my spouse was like, okay, I'll get our, baby girl to bed. And this morning I woke up and I just thanked him for that grace. Thank you so much for the grace that you extended me last night to be able to go to bed early. And I think that that's a great example of what we need to offer ourselves sometimes too in that. And in just saying this is it today. Like any boundaries that you can set for yourself are great boundaries because only you know where the boundaries need to be set. And only you know, it goes back to choice and control. You answer to yourself and when you're being overextended. But in a lighthearted way, I can just say, stop it. But I do hope that you look up that skit and just keep it marked on YouTube as a reminder when you're feeling those kind of days and you need a little bit of encouragement. Just stop it. Say no. It's okay. Have grace for yourself and know this is my limit, and it just is what it is. Yeah.
Awesome. I have that saved in my watch later list, Dr. Fuller.
Okay. It's not very long, so it shouldn't take very long.
For sure. Thank you. I'll check it out after this. I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is one of the most helpful things when working through hardships with students, especially since you say you specialize with trauma? What is one of the most helpful things that you've learned through your work in counseling?
To help students? Like, what is one of the most helpful things that I've learned to help students, or what is just?
I'd be curious to hear the answer for like either students or for yourself, if there's a valuable lesson you feel like you've gained through the process.
Okay. These are really good questions. I just want to throw that out there. I was not prepared for some of these questions. So high fives to all of y'all. Go. I think one of the most valuable things that I've learned is just stopping before you answer. Where that seems really simple, but I think in society we live in such an instant gratification. Everything has to happen so fast and we have to go, that sometimes it's really important for us to just pause and really not just listen to what the other person's saying, but actually pause before we speak and pause and just take a minute to breathe. And I say that in terms of, I think that that's probably one of the things that I impart to the students that come into my office as well, that in all of this time in working with trauma or working on, like the first world problems, that we all have, or in working with breakups, or in working with stressed out schedules, or I'm going to fail a class and I don't want my parents to find out, or regardless of what the problem is, we tend to respond or react to all those problems from a really emotional place. Like our emotions are the first thing to kick in. And a lot of times our logic is the last thing to kick in. And so when we can feel the feelings like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's happening. I can't believe this happened. I don't know why they broke up with me. I got in a car accident. I don't want to tell anybody. My insurance is going to go up. Like, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. Like your mind just race. No matter what it is, for each of you, it just races, right? And the faster our mind races, the more amped up we become emotionally. And I think sometimes we react out of emotional place instead of responding after we take that breath. And so I think both what I've learned and what I try to impart to those who I get a chance to speak to, who I'm privileged enough to speak to, is, hey, just breathe for a second. Just let out that deep breath. So then we can start to process what's going on. And it's not necessarily like a mental health thing. It doesn't always have to be like a mental issue. It doesn't always have to be like depression or suicide or those kind of things. It really is anything. There's a difference between reacting emotionally and responding logically. So yeah, I think just Oh, hold on. I'm just going to breathe for a second. I think that's really important. So important, Katie's going to go and take a deep breath right now.
While she does that, I will ask my next question. So obviously telehealth has really amped up, especially in our current climate with COVID and everything.
Yes.
What are some things that you could say to reassure someone who's experiencing telehealth or like doing counseling through telehealth, that they're still going to get that same kind of quality that they would in an in-person setting?
Sure. Great question, Lizzie. Sometimes when we get people to call here to schedule appointments, the image or the perception of telehealth is actually via telephone, hence the tele part, when it's really not. It's here at the counseling center, we use telehealth through Zoom, which is HIPAA compliant, and allows us to not only hear the person, but actually see the person. In fact, we require we try to require students to actually use their cameras so that we can see who we're talking to. So sometimes I think it's a matter of answering the projection that it's via telephone. And I think it's just a matter of being present. You have to trust that the counselor is going to be present. I give the option. I tell the students, sometimes I'm filling out a form, and so I'm kind of typing in some stuff. Just like if I'm going to write it down, I might as well just kind of type it. But I'm a note taker, and so I tell them, I'll share my screen with you so that you can see that I'm not writing an email, that kind of thing. So. But I think it's important just to have a transparency and just to communicate overall. I think telehealth offers great options. And in fact, I think it's even better for students who are afraid to come in person, that it somehow seems to offer this ability to be like one step removed. Like I'm not right there in person, so I'm a little bit more protected. I don't have to feel as vulnerable when I'm sharing something. So I kind of see it as an advantage for those students who have a hard time coming in person, that they can still be in the comfort of their home, they can still be in a safe place, and there's still that level of disconnect, just enough to allow some personal, but not complete personal. Does that make sense? So I think it's actually been really great. It's been quite the transition for sure. But still, I think it's great. If it's a good fit for you and your counselor, and there seems to be like this transparency and communication, I think you can only offer what you can offer. And, I tell them what you see is what you get. Real talk. So, I think it just comes down to that too. So. I feel like I might have answered that one a little bit better than the first question you asked.
Yeah, it is very, very good information. Very influential. Thank you so much. I have my final question. I know most of our graduate students, some of them are graduate assistants here on campus, and so their term is usually 2 years, and so they have to finish their master's degree in 2 years. And so I'm pretty much here to improve myself academically and professionally. But I feel like my 2 years are kind of crunched into a small 2-year window, and I'm now, once I graduate, I'm like, okay, now what? And so I was wondering if you could maybe go into a little bit of detail of how to like juggle oh my gosh, I'm graduating, I have a master's degree, now what? Like, do I apply for a job in Missouri? Do I extend and go apply in New York? Do I branch myself out? Do I try to like be professional in one area, or try to go out and broaden my horizons, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to ask that question to, because I am like, the sky's the limit. Like, woohoo, go for it. I wish that I would have had a mentor or somebody to tell me that when I was younger. I really felt like I was boxed in and I didn't realize it. I feel like until it was too late to realize it. I think that if you have the opportunity to go and explore, go for it. And I say that as somebody who's worked in Texas, where I grew up. I've lived in Colorado, and now I'm in Missouri. And this, I don't imagine, is my forever home. I would love to go back to Colorado. but man, there are days when I'm just like, I wonder what the East Coast would offer, but I have a family. So you have to think about those things. But, I think if you have opportunities to expand yourself, expand and grow, because if you have a supportive spouse, or if you have a support network, or if you're on your own and you're just still kind of waiting through your options, don't limit yourself. I think when we fall into the trap of limiting, or I only get to be this one thing, or only get to do this one thing, that we really get away from that growth mindset. And I think it's one of our charges that we should take up in life, is to explore and to be adventurous with ourselves, not just adventurous with, as well as the opportunities that are given to explore different areas, not only professionally, but personally and, geographically. I think instead of being in a box, go for a hexagon, or, pentagon, or, do something crazy and different. I hope that my 2.5-year-old gets that sense, because that would be the same thing that I would tell her if she was asking me that. So that's almost like a motherly perspective potentially. But don't box yourself in. If you have ways and, support, and you have the opportunity, even if you're taking a $20,000 pay cut, hey, you'll survive. If it's worth it, you'll find a way. You will find a way to get it done, because it's worth it. And anything that's worth it, you will work to make it work. And I'm just a really strong proponent of that, Nathan. So probably not the best logical response, but
that's fine.
Man, go for it.
I just wanted your professional opinion, and I value that. So thank you.
I think if you have it, you have the chance, you have the opportunity, you have the support. Sky's the limit for any of us. Even if you have a family, don't box yourself in. Explore things, ask questions, figure out what your spouse is willing to do. What's the compromise? Challenge the status quo. Sometimes I think that's important for all of us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And you're recording that, so that's out there forever.
Yep. Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I also have one final question as well. I know it may kind of be a repeat from majority of everybody asking questions, and kind of a piggyback off in the mind, but I'm just gonna go ahead and ask it. I put what are the best ways for students who may feel depressed or have anxiety about things going on in their lives?
Yeah, so again, I'm just going to encourage, if you have the ability to reach out and ask for help, I think, that's always great, just to get a different perspective and to kind of reframe on some things. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, it comes down to balance. Really self-evaluate and recognize self-care and how important that is, to take breaks and to step away and to, stop it and say no and set some boundaries and, give yourself the grace to do that. I just can't overstate that enough, that it's really, really important for all of us, no matter at what level we are academically or professionally or both, to be able to stop and self-evaluate and recognize where we need to step up our self-care. That's not something to feel guilty about. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to put to the back burner, because, I think a lot about the flight stewardess when they're on there and they, go over the safety things, fasten the seatbelt, and they demonstrate and all that stuff. And then they hold out the thing and it drops from the ceiling, and they say, if you're flying with somebody, please place the mask over you before you put it on a child, because you cannot help the child if you can't help yourself. Like, you have to be willing and able to make your life sustainable before you can help somebody else. If you're going to hit burnout, you're not going to be present for your family or your friends or anybody else. And other things are going to suffer from that. And so it's super, super, super important for all of us to be able to self-evaluate and say, man, I need to take a time out, I need to get some self-care in, and to be okay with that. Yeah. And ask for help. Revert back to your childhood and ask for help. It is okay. Ask for help. Ask for help. Ask for help. Ask for help. Yes.
Thank you.
I have one.
All right.
What would you recommend to students who are apprehensive about seeking out counseling due to the stigma, the cost, etc.?
Yes, so that's kind of piggyback off the question that Lizzie asked, I think, when you stepped away. So just reiterating, the stigma is absolutely prevalent. Hopefully we're really swinging that pendulum and kind of getting around that, turning the tide a little bit. But just to continue, if you need a friend, to come with you, bring a friend. If you need to, reach out for help, and it's really hard sometimes to make those initial appointments. We have some students who make an appointment, they cancel it, make an appointment, and they do it 3 or 4 times before they actually follow through with it. And so I think that it's just keep trying, just keep trying. Somebody's going to pick up the phone, somebody's going to be there. And hopefully you land with the clinician or the person, regardless if it's here or somebody else, where you feel like, oh man, they get me. And you feel safe, and you feel that it's okay to be vulnerable and to share something, it's really unfortunate. And we fight every day to end that stigma. And I think a lot of people are doing everything they can. But at this point, it is what it is. So just to continue to ask for help like we did when we were kids, just it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a sign of strength and courage and bravery. So.
Thank you very much for, if you repeated your answer from before. I really appreciate hearing it.
No, I think that it's good, and maybe somebody needed to hear it twice. So thanks for asking again. Yeah. Anybody?
Yeah, does anybody else have any other questions they would like to ask?
I'll go ahead and ask one more. For those who might not, so some of us are graduating soon. What would you recommend for them if they're going about the process for like finding a counselor or a therapist because we'll no longer be able to use the resources of the counseling center?
No, that's a really great question. I think it's important when you're working in mental health and you're trying to find somebody, it's really important that you find somebody that you feel like you connect with. Some people appreciate, my real talk, what you see is what you get. And some people want something a little bit more formal, and I'm cool with that. So I think it's important to know that you can fire your counselor if you don't feel like it's a good fit. That's a thing. That's a real thing. We get fired all the time. So I have to journal about it and talk to my dog about it, and it's going to be okay. But I think it's important for those who are seeking out services, if you're not going to be at UCM or wherever you're going to be in the future, to vet. So find out what your insurance is, if you're going to have insurance, or if you're not going to have insurance, what are free resources in the community. Call around. See, what styles they have. If you're looking for a Christian counselor, or if you're not looking for a Christian counselor, probably don't look those up on, Google. There's so many different options out there. Whether if you want to do something more trauma-based, like EMDR, or if you need something more extensive, like DBT, or if you want to do something just like talk therapy, more like a cognitive behavioral approach. Or if, going back to Katie's first question about, substance abuse, there are so many different varieties in the community, wherever you are. So please search those out. Do your research, vet them, ask them questions, call them. If you call and leave 2 or 3 messages and they don't get back to you, I wouldn't spend the time to call them a 4th time. Like, not worth it. You know what I mean? Like, it's those kind of things. Like, don't just settle. Because it's important. That's such an important piece. If you're gonna sit with that person and you're gonna want them to hold some of your life story and your life experience, man, you want them to be as present as possible. So make sure it's a good fit. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I guess I'll open it. Does anybody else have any final questions?
Nothing. Gosh, that didn't even take an hour, guys. Come on now. Free consultation. No more questions?
Anybody? All right.
Good.
Yeah. So, Katie, I'll just leave the floor to you and your final remarks.
All right. before you say something, I do just want to say thank you all to this group, to the GSA for the message of Wellness Week that y'all are getting out there. Kudos to y'all for really recognizing the need for that. And for any graduate students that are on this, that are listening or that will listen, hang in there, and you got this. And this is such a period of time in your life. It's a short period, and it will pass. And you got this. You can do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Fuller, on behalf of GSA, I want to thank you for your time today. We appreciate you sharing your insight and expertise with us so that we can spread awareness to our student population, as you just said. For everyone else who's joining us via the recording, we thank you for your time as well, and we hope that this was helpful for you and that you will continue to utilize what you learned today moving forward. This session was recorded and will be sent out to all GSA members with timestamps for each section so that they may look back on this video, and we'll timestamp each of the questions. For students who are joining us, if you have not already joined GSA, a link to our application will also be included in that email. If you have any questions, you can email us at gsa@ucmo.edu. Thank you all again, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.